Good afternoon, everyone. International sunspot number. Here we go into the grand solar minimum. Bombogenesis Grayson, Massachusetts' highest tide ever recorded. Ice in the streets, Atlantic waters, icebergs on shore, major disruptions to travel, blizzard conditions from New York all the way down to Virginia, New York City, visible from space. This looks more like a superimposed frozen Chesapeake Bay than it would be a street in Massachusetts. And all I can say is frozen America. And while you're watching the video, please remember to subscribe to Adapt 2030 and click that bell so you can get the latest updates. A look at the international sunspot number. Going back to 1850 on the left, you'll see the average number of sunspots, 13-month smooth is red, mean total in black. We have arrived at the end of this solar cycle into the 11-year minimum, 3 years ahead of schedule. Valentina Zarkova, Dr. Abutamatov, John Casey, and so many others are saying we are entering a grand solar minimum, and this is the last amount of major sunspots that we're going to see for decades. If it follows the pattern as we've seen around the 1800s and we go back to the 1600s modern minimum, we go even further back in time to the Wolf minimum, the Oort minimum. We follow the wipeout of the Chinese dynasties and the troubles we had in Europe during the modern minimum. We are going to have trouble with our agriculture. And this year, 2018, is going to be the absolute amplification. It is already here. And the ferocity you're seeing in this Bombogenesis, which is only one of 5 storms happening across the planet at the moment, this is going to be the baseline for 2018. So let's go into it. Frozen America is what I'm titling this, along with the Weather Channel. Record flooding unleashed through Massachusetts. Winter Storm Grayson hammers the northeast U.S. Well, it's not really just the northeast. Blizzard warnings all the way down to Virginia. Feet of snow in South Carolina, and swimming pools are freezing in Florida. Angela Fritz brings us this one on Twitter. Wide out here so you can see the cyclonic rotation as it made its way up the East Coast and going through the Canadian Maritimes over the next few days. And this is from Massachusetts' highest recorded tide ever. And it's interesting how they put the 59 millibar drop, 24 hours, record magnitude for this part of the Western Atlantic, dating back to 1976. There's only 4 decades of data, and they're saying it's an all-time record, but really, is this the all-time record, or could we find information further back in the 1600s that would have eclipsed this exponentially? But here we are locked into a minuscule 40-year time frame out of hundreds of thousands of years trying to prove something with CO2. Bomb cyclone, also known as Bombogenesis, minimum 3,600 flights. This was as of yesterday. It's increased to something like 12,000 so far. High winds, 100-mile-an-hour winds and sideways blowing ice, plus ice from the sea coming in to the streets. Massachusetts, Kennebunkport, roads are underwater, ice clogged chunks. Few more images of the flooding here for you. Pick this off the Weather Channel. Record flooding. You can see the amount of area covered there that's receiving flooding right now in the coastal areas. Let's jump over to Sputnik. Also some interesting images here of the flooding, the waters. Boston's experiencing as well. Duxbury. Boston seafront. This is one of my favorites from Kennebunkport. Ice from the sea actually floating in. And it's just image after image of this unusual rare flooding. And these types of storms were forecast well in advance of the increase in the grand solar minimum intensity. It is here, and we are starting to see the beginning of it. This is how infrastructure is damaged. This is how crops are lost. Taking a look at winter storm, let's move over to the snowfall totals. Looking at some of the gusts, this is on the tail end of the storm, literally still getting 40, 50 mile an hour wind gusts. But the snow that was left behind, Portland, Maine. As the blizzard still rages up the East Coast, top snowfall totals in some of the areas at 19 inches. This is far from over. This is just literally the beginning. And then looking at snowfall totals through the next 24 hours, another 18 inches on top of that. Here is what it looks like downtown New York City. And it was unusually cold during the New Year's celebrations as well. Taking a look at Boston, same thing. It's exactly the same images time after time again. Boston, I don't want to go to work in that for sure. Whiteout conditions around Sea Isle. Jump back over into New York City, Times Square. And LaGuardia Airport. This is exactly why there's delays. Look how much ice and snow is falling down the East Coast. And it's not as if you can just rent a car and get out of there and make it to your destination, because you can see the road conditions in a horrible state as well. Thanks for watching. Hope you got something out of the video.